I put a disclaimer essentially saying, like, we're just talking about our experiences.
Yes.
Our personal experiences.
Yeah.
And we're not experts.
Not experts.
Not experts.
Not whatsoever.
Yeah.
We're just, honestly, like, these things have been bottled up inside me for, like, years. And
Yeah.
it's nice to just talk about it to colleagues and friends rather than just bottling it up for all, for decades.
We're talking about it to people who have no idea what you're talking about, and they're like, oh, yeah. And you're like, never mind.
Right. If you can't relate, you can't relate,
What's up with this cold weather?
It's chilly.
That's why I'm wearing this sweater. I'm not a Raiders fan, but it is warm.
keeping you cozy. Keeping it
cozy, man.
Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to 2024. We're in 2024. Here we are.
Crazy.
So wild. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe. Hit us up on IG. Interact with us at First Gen Podcast. I'll put it right here for you to read, but it's number 1 ST_GEN_podcast. So ask us questions. We would love to hear from you. And we're excited to dive in and, heal together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk. So to set up this episode for the year, I had the amazing chance to reconnect with a couple of colleagues that basically helped spark this conversation of this podcast. I found out that I wasn't alone with these feelings of being so in between and sometimes in a place of not belonging. So these great colleagues at work, I found out a little bit more of their background and their upbringings. Turns out it's pretty similar despite our cultural backgrounds. I'm excited for you to meet Hannah and Dan. Hannah coming from a Russian, Ukrainian American background, and then Dan coming from a Cuban American background. And yeah, we went deep, but Nina, I wanted to get your take of how you liked the conversation, some takeaways. Tell me.
Yeah, I think, it's not just Asian Americans, first gen, experiencing this. So I'm really glad that we were able to open up the room to other first generations. And there's a lot of similarities, right? And so I was really, it was interesting to hear that. And I loved hearing it and their perspective and what they've experienced. And so I think that's just great awareness for everyone else. It's there's a lot of first generations from all over the world that are living here in the US. So again, they're also feeling like they couldn't talk about it and they were confined in this small box. So just super excited. And Hannah and Dan, super great. Really loved hearing from them. So yeah, really excited for you guys to hear their story as well.
Yes, so good. It's so good. And we got vulnerable for sure. So
oh yeah. You have to be if you're going to be on this show. So,
you gotta
show podcast, whatever. Yeah.
You gotta open up,
have uncomfortable conversations. That's how we grow and learn. So, yeah,
that's how we evolve. 100%.
Exactly.
Thank you for tuning in. Please share this with someone you may think could benefit from these conversations. Someone who might appreciate it. But thank you to our listeners and being part of this healing journey with us. Be kind to one another. Enjoy this episode. Thank you both for hopping on.
Of course.
Hopping on to this.
We're happy to be here.
You both are like my favorite colleagues and kind of where this podcast stemmed from and like just ideating for so many years now. Like we're in 2024.
Wow.
And I just looked at our email thread from when our first little meeting invite during the pandemic was like March 27th was like when you, Hannah, set out like a group meeting where it's First Generation Club. That's what that's what we called it. First Generation Club. And then here we are. Here we are.
T, you're making it a reality.
4 years later, it's happening.
We're proud of you.
Stop. Well, thank you. Again, thank you for being here and just being open and honest and whatever you want to share. But like, I just want this to be like a little special moment to just open up our hearts and healing, because that's what it is. Like, first generation, there's a lot to unpack despite all our backgrounds. But yeah.
So many years of therapy bills.
All the bills. And yeah, therapy is also a taboo in where I come from. So
Same.
It's already tough to even just say that and like say that from my chest. Like, I'm going to therapy.
Oh yeah, we don't use the T word in my household.
The amount of times they're like, oh, I have plans, but those plans are therapy. And it's like, well, you just say it's plans instead of what you're actually doing.
You could be saying, honestly, the most unhinged thing, like, instead of saying I'm going to therapy. And
Oh, yeah, 100%. I'm gonna like just jump off a bridge and have like a bungee to my ankles. That's okay, be safe. But going to therapy, that's gonna literally start a fight.
Yeah.
Right.
We were talking about it this morning where it's like your relative, whoever that you're talking to, will be like, are you going to talk about me? And it's like, no! Even though that's like number one culprit in your life that you're going to
I remember in deep COVID, I did therapy at home, and I would do it like towards the end of the day on Fridays because my parents would they would usually like either leave for a little bit, go on like their drive, and like I would close 2 doors. So I would hear when the door would open, and I was like, and if that second door opens, then I know they're a lot closer, and I had to tell my therapist, I'm like, we should like put this on pause for a hot second. Let's just wait. Being back home over COVID was a time and a half.
100%. Only the bravest soldiers did that, by the way.
Yeah. No, I think I wanted to cover that since, again, this stemmed years ago, and we kind of had to go back to our roots a little bit and then be around family or lack thereof. I know that is a struggle in itself, because you got to go back to the family and be safe and all these things. The world's ending. We didn't know, and you have to face the reality of.
I feel like Hannah and I at that time were really good, like, mirrors of one another. Of like, it was everything everywhere. I did like option B, Hannah did option A.
We shared a therapist also at this time.
Oh, what?
Shared a therapist with the same therapist. That's you. Like, Hannah stayed home. What'd you say?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but our therapist is first generation American, and she specialized in individuating from your family. And so I started going to her, and then I was like, Dan, you gotta go to her. And then
referral bonus.
Nancy,
You gotta go to our girl.
we love you. Nancy, you did a lot for us. We love you so
Did a
much.
lot.
So we shared a therapist.
Oh, that's amazing.
It was good. It was a cute one. We were both in on it.
Continue on what you were saying.
Hannah did option A, staying in LA, because she was like, that's better for my mental health. I'm like, I gotta go home. I think that's better for my mental health. I'm like, I don't know which one was better, which one was worse. I'm like, at some points I was doing really well, and Hannah was doing really well. And at my other times, like, oh God, my family's up my ass. And Hannah's like, I ain't got that problem. I'm doing a lot better right now. Neither was better, neither was worse, but it was an interesting like reflection of the decision we just made.
Totally. It was truly choose your own adventure and pick your own poison. Like, just make a choice.
What can you swallow?
I'll never forget the day I saw Hannah over COVID have a glass of water like this, and she was rationing her cold brew, and she literally just put like a drop of cold brewed water, and I was like, so save my girl.
Okay, for the record, my parents are from the former Soviet Union, and my dad is from Russia, and my mom is from Ukraine. And my dad grew up in St. Petersburg, which was formerly Leningrad, and his mom grew up during the blockade of Leningrad. So that was when there was a huge, essentially, famine, man-made famine, because there was a blockade. So they couldn't access like fresh food. And so people were literally starving and eating rats, eating hair eating dust, which is insane. And obviously that wasn't like everyone's experience, but that definitely was more common than you would like to imagine. And so my dad grew up always hearing like, ration your food, don't waste anything, you know? And so that in my time of crisis, clearly.
But even then, I remember like everyone was going to like the supermarket, and Hannah was like, "Nah, I'm gonna go to like the convenience store. I'm gonna go to the liquor store that literally sells like canned goods too." Like Hannah was like had her things stocked, and she wasn't like going to all the places where I was like, "Wow, that's that."
I was like survival. I was like my old
Yeah.
Soviet like upbringing is going to really come in handy right now. So I went into straight up like insane person mode, but also like
We
I'm
all
gonna
went into
survive.
No, you went into your bunker. You
Yeah.
Yeah.
basically made your safe space.
Protect yourself. You know what you do to stay safe.
I had a friend who's like American, and I was trying to show her my ways of like, okay, you need to buy this. Let's go to the liquor store. Because she was like, I'm just going to go to Trader Joe's and buy a bag of popcorn. And I was like, no, you cannot. And I was like, you need to seriously take this 100%. Like, you need to realize what's going on because this is not a drill. And she's like, no, it's going to be fine. As the doors of yummy.com were like shutting around us. And I was like, come on, we're going. And I made her cry in an aisle of the liquor store because I was like, okay, and this is Spam and we're going to eat Spam at some point. So like stock up on Spam. No one's taking it seriously, but like this is a good move for us. She literally just started crying in the liquor store from being nervous. She was like, but I just want Annie's mac and cheese and popcorn. And I was like, that's not an option. So I went a little hard.
Hey, you gave her the truth. And hopefully she powered through it. And nothing wrong with Spam. Like, I eat that. Even
Spam is good.
Even
Give me a
without...
Spam musubi.
Yeah, Spam with subi.
100%.
Spam and eggs.
I think a lot of people are intimidated by Spam because they don't know how to cook it.
Yes.
I just want to put that out there as a disclaimer.
I totally agree.
So I was like, we are doing this. And she was like, I don't know. I don't know if I can. I don't know how.
Yeah, don't eat it straight from the can. You got to cook it
Yeah, cook it up
properly. Put the right amount of sauce.
Let me tell you, I was willing to eat it.
The right amount of sauce. Are you talking about the sauce? Yeah.
I was
straight
like,
from a can.
Hey, if I had to. Speaking of rationing, I was like, if I've got to do that, all the power goes out, I'll do it.
Need to be with you when the world goes down the shit again. Essentially.
Also,
it's inevitable.
It's
happening
delicious,
again.
and I'm just putting that fully out there.
No, like a long time ago, I actually wanted to open up my own Spam food truck. Because you could do a lot of things with Spam.
You can do a lot.
Do a lot. But we're not endorsed by Spam whatsoever.
What is the actual...
Photoshop a Spam right here, T.
What is
Spam
the
right
actual
there.
product? Because Spam's the brand.
It's processed meats.
Well, yeah, but what is it? Just mystery meat?
You probably don't want to know, and then you don't want to know.
It's like, have you ever seen, you remember the show on Discovery, I think it was called How It's Made?
Yes.
I'll never forget the day I saw how hot dogs are made, and I don't think I ate a hot dog for like, well, just joking, I was a chubby kid, so I probably ate a hot dog like a week later. But in my mind, I was like, I'm not eating hot dogs ever again. And it was just like, you don't need to know how it's made. Not every.
You don't need to meet your heroes. Like, just
Yeah.
leave it as is.
It's like finding out what's inside the chicken nuggets at McDonald's.
Oof. Yeah.
I had a friend in
Real
high school.
chicken. It's real chicken, though. Oh.
Now. And the fact that they bragged about that, like, on TV in the commercials, they were like, oh, real chicken. New.
It's like, what did we grow up with?
Don't tell us.
What did we... Well, back then, I do remember, finding with my sister with the chicken nuggets, they had the dark meat and the white meat. I don't know if you have...
Oh, yes.
Of course.
You could tell which ones was the white meat. They're like shaped like a boot or something, and then the dark meat ones were like the really tasty ones. But that probably isn't real chicken. But
They just added some dye, one of them.
My friend in high school used to work at McDonald's, so he would tell us what was in it. And apparently the chicken nuggets, before they hit the deep fryer, are sort of just like a Play-Doh consistency in a bag. That's what it was at one point.
Not endorsed by McDonald's either.
Oh, right.
Don't
Shoot,
come
how
for
many
me,
things?
McDonald's.
How many things? Well, going back to COVID, for me, I was like in between both of your scenarios. I was on my own out here in LA, and my family's based out here. But my father was very sick, so we were very
very like particular with germs and all that. So it's like we had to arrange our lifestyle around trying to visit him or whatnot because of COVID. So it was also a weird time for me, also dealing with my parents too. It's just like you gotta wash your clothes, you got like no shoes, all these special things before even entering the house, and that made it really tough to even interact with my family. So it was a nice like balance between both y'all. But I wanted to ask you, Dan, how was it over there? I know you were living there for a little bit of time also with your
Yeah.
family.
I was like uber paranoid. I was like, my mom actually at one point in COVID said, I think you need to talk to someone because this is changing your personality. I was like uber paranoid. So I'd gotten really sick in like 2017. I was in the hospital for like 10 days. Like I woke up at the hospital and like my siblings were there and I was like no voice. And they're like, we thought you were gonna die, bro. And I was like, okay, cool. I had the flu and like a parasite. So when COVID hit, I was like, I gotta go home. Take me home. If shit goes south, I know where I want to be. So whatever. And I was like, I remember one day specifically, my brother's girlfriend at the time, we're all eating dinner at the table. And this is like April. And when Miami eventually became like the epicenter, and she made a joke because we had like a long table. And one day someone, I think it was like my dad's like, move closer to us. And she's like, Danny doesn't sit close to us depending how bad COVID is. Like I would literally be like, just like 6 inches further. I was like, I'm just going to eat a little bit away from you guys. Cause I was crazy about it too. But, I don't know. It was good. Like I learned a lot, like, cause from Miami. So I learned that I like being close to my family, but not directly in the same household or sometimes maybe even the same city. I like the options like, oh, you're just a quick flight from me. That holds a lot of value. And I was home for about like a year and change. For as bad as Miami was in terms of nobody believing COVID in Florida, our bubble was actually really strict because my neighbor's dad has ALS and he's bound to a wheelchair. So we were all very like strict about it. We had a big bubble, but it was like a tight bubble. It was 12 of us total, and like nobody ever actually got COVID and like spread it around. If anybody got COVID, it's because they broke away and never came back. But like I was going lobstering and fishing a lot, and I loved it. That was a good way to like release energy and be with people. But I was here for about like the year, and then I remember when I got vaxxed, I was like, it's time to go. Your boy has to break away and go to a place that like feels more like myself. So I went to Colorado and I was there for like 6 months and I really enjoyed it. But it was just a good time. I feel like gaining weight was important. I mean, like I come from like a Hispanic household, Cuban. I'm gay, and being gay isn't like always celebrated sometimes like Latino culture. And that got kind of really hard. And then with COVID and then with like the rise of like DeSantis and whatnot, I was like, I gotta break away for a hot second, and like living in LA, like living in California for a long time and really exploring different areas did form a lot of my like thought process. And once COVID kind of ended and I came back home, I still remember like going to certain parties and hearing even now some people the way that they speak and like express ideas. I'm like genuinely shocked that I still hear this in a major city. So I left for kind of that reason a bit as well, to just be in like a more progressive environment. But at the end of the day, I still love Miami. It's always home. But it's like you learn what you like and then you learn what you dislike, and you also learn to how much you can put up with it before you kind of like reach the cap. And now what I'm trying to really do is like stop myself before I get to the cap. That way it's never exhausted, and understand also. And I think you mentioned this in like, I heard the first episode of the podcast where when you turned 18, all your white friends were like, oh, you still listen to your parents? Like, oh, da da da. And I'm like, bro, I'm turning 30. And like,
Yes.
my mom low-key is like the little puppeteer in my life. I'm like, gotta like clip those strings every once in a while because damn, hold on tight. This it's not even string, it's like a steel rod sometimes.
Yeah. You gotta saw it off. You gotta.
Yeah, I'm like, oh god.
No, and I know you have a big family. Are you the youngest or in the?
I'm the youngest of my nuclear family, and then I'm the youngest of the entire generation of all cousins too.
Oh
So I'm the
wow.
youngest. Yeah,
Baby.
little baby.
Baby.
You're the carrier of all the dreams. I feel like that's, everybody
Well,
can
that's
just
what-
put their dreams or their hopes or wishes
Right,
on you.
because it passed the elders, and they're like, "Well, I couldn't do it, so here you go do this thing," you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, my mom's the puppeteer in my family, so it's just the struggle is real. Trying to even even to this day, I'm in my 30s, late 30s,
You're a mom.
and I'm a mom now. Yes,
Yeah, you're on too.
like so I'm learning things I don't want to pass down to my son
Totally.
because of how traumatic it was with my mom, you know. And I
What was the traumatic? Like her style of parenting, or like?
no, that's great. That's great. That's a great question because yeah, trauma can be various forms of things.
Yeah.
It can go extreme, but like for this, it was very mental and emotional.
And
Where it was very helicopter, very strict, kind of told us what to do, how to do it, putting us in a box, right? So it's just like I couldn't. They gave us a very sheltered life, which obviously put someone in a box for so long, they're gonna find ways to get out of it, around you,
Mhm.
lie to you, you know, just
Totally.
to get out, you know. And so growing up all those years, it was just like I was pent up in a box. Like I really wanted to get out of the house because they expected us, my sister and I. I'm the eldest, so I kind of felt like I paved the way a little bit to try and get out of that hold that my mom had with the whole entire family.
You did. You paved the way.
And like after
Naps.
college, I was like, I need to move out. They were not about that. They wanted me to stay home until I got married,
Mhm.
to move out. I'm like, what kind of old school way is this? You know, like
Yeah.
like no. And so I kind of like went behind their backs, and I got 2 jobs in the industry. You know, I wanted to follow my passion in production and post and all that, and got 2 jobs. Just like if I lose one, I have a backup, save my money,
Mhm.
save enough money to put down my rent for, you know,
That song, 2 jobs, work
2
hard,
jobs,
independent. Let's do it.
down, put the deposit down. And I told them the day before I was going to move out, I'm like, hey, I signed a lease. I'm moving out tomorrow. And they were not happy, but I was just excited to just move forward with my life and not be tied down to their rules. And they actually helped me move out. Like it was like the impact was rough, but at the end of the day they were still loving and like you're our daughter, we're going to help you get through this next thing. And I was like, okay. That was like I was freaking out the whole time leading up to it. Turns out it wasn't as bad as I would have thought. So I'm glad I moved with my instincts to I just got to get out of here. It's not good for my health. It just felt so constricted.
Yeah. I've used this like metaphor with Hannah before in a situation like that where it's like, yeah, well, I was like, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? But it's like the bomb blows off in a city, and now it's like we have to rebuild the city. And each time like another bomb detonates, like the hope is that eventually it gets like smaller and smaller. Then instead of the whole city being in rubble, it's just like now it's just a little building. Now you can make a smaller repair, and then eventually when you break news, it's like, well, yeah, it's kind of like not expected, but it's like, you have your own life. Of course, you make decisions that like are out of our control, and we have nothing to, we can't do anything but like I like provide guidance or just be accepting of it. And the guidance we do provide, hopefully, it's more of like an approach of wisdom versus one of judgment. And I feel like that's like the golden spot eventually with like your parents. Like I tell you something, and when the feedback, let it be a spot of wisdom of like an experience that you maybe had and like what you learned versus a judgment one.
Yeah.
Totally. Well said.
That is great. That is great advice for saying.
Yeah.
Love it.
My friend growing up, she was really rebellious, and her parents were really strict, and I was always kind of like not like a scaredy cat with my parents, but my parents were pretty chill. They just had like super high expectations. So if anything interrupted their expectations of how I did in school or how I, behaved, then that's when they would get really strict about like leaving the house or, like chores or whatever it was. And my friend Nicole, she was always getting in trouble with her parents. And she said, it's on the kid to renegotiate the boundaries with the parents, because the parents are never going to be like, I'm going to have less control now. So it's on the kid to constantly be like, hey, this isn't working for me. How do I change this? And then eventually, there's that dance that you're talking about. So I feel like I'm seeing that in what you're describing as well.
Yeah, I feel like the negotiating part, like that comes also from having a parent that gives you the options. Like T, you grew up a certain way. I feel like they call like gentle parenting now, but like you grew up that way. It's like, how do you put it on Orion now to give him like you don't give him a box. So how do you find yourself parenting?
Yeah, that's the fine line too. It's like, I do want him to explore and have all the options, and I want to try and support that as the best way I can too. So I'm actually just like, kind of do whatever you want. Like, I'm told the polar opposite, which I know I need to figure out also on my end, like where to set those boundaries, but like not this small box, but maybe a little wider, a little wider, like the safe zone. For me, it's like safety. Like what is safe?
You put a big playpen that way, not to get up, but at the end of the day,
you can climb over it, but there's like little side bumpers, if you will. But my situation now is the interaction I see with my mom and my son, and she's starting to do the whole puppeteering with my kid, and that's where some fun friction happens as well, and it's trying to set boundaries with her. I'm like, hey, where I'm actually now expressing myself, because it was very hard expressing myself growing up. Like I was very do as you're told, very the obedient, like people pleaser type role that I didn't speak up for myself. And now I see that changing, where I'm like, I'm speaking up for my kid, so the same generational cycle does not be brought down to him. And mind you, I know my mom was brought up a certain way, and I get that, I understand that, but also it's my responsibility too to kind of change that, evolve it to what what I believe in now, and how progressive everything is now. It's just like, I'm not gonna go with these old school ways. And that's one of like the reasons when he was born, like I didn't even tell my mom the gender, because she was very like, blue is for boy, pink is for girl, and I was like, wanted gender neutral colors, because like the old school thing, it's just like I have to like level set with her now, and that's something I'm learning as we speak, like going forward is, hey mom, I want a gentle parent. Like her advice the other day, because I spent the holidays with her since the daycare was closed, so hey, let's spend some time with Lola, with grandma, and she straight up just told me, it's like, you need to scare him sometimes. And I'm like, excuse me, scare him? He's like, yeah, you need to put fear on him. I'm like, so he could be obedient.
Jump out of the corner, like, boo.
Like, you need to scare him. I'm like, why? The way that you parented me, I have to go to therapy for that. And then she shut it up. But like moments like that, I'm just like, that's her thinking, and I'm put in this place where I need to, set boundaries.
You're seeing how the sausage is made. You're like, oh, so you were trying to scare me. Like, like all those moments where you're like, oh, I feel so, shamed or scared or whatever. It's like, oh, so that actually was your goal. Like, and she probably looks at you now and is like, you're great.
She says,
amazing.
You turned out fine. I'm like, I'm going to therapy. I'm not fine.
Yeah, totally. But to her, it's like almost more proof that it worked, because here you are, like a successful woman, like you have a family of your own. I'm not condoning scaring your children, of course, but I think that it's really interesting seeing that generational feedback, because, she's like, hey, this worked for me. Now you try. And then you're like, no, it actually didn't work the way you think, and I'm not going to do that.
I feel like that comes from like parents who like I'm not technically quote unquote first gen, because like my mom was born in the US, born in Miami, but like of Cuban parents. Miami is essentially just northern Latam, so it's like a little different. But like my mom's upbringing in a sense is like similar to you guys, how your parents were born elsewhere, you're the first one here, but she grew up with the mindset like my grandma always told her, eso no hace falta, meaning you don't need that. So she was like, I want to play a sport, you don't need that. You want to have a sleepover, you don't need that. All these like restrictions of you don't need that, you don't need that. So, but when I grew up, my mom was like, try this, try that, like try all the things that like you didn't get to do. And that was like her changing the way in which she was raised, keeping a little bit of, the guardrails of like, maybe you don't need to like go to this crazy party and get like twisted all the time, but like safety rails in a way. And I feel like that comes when you realize that there are elements of your childhood you don't want to continue on your kids.
Right. No, it's guidelines, especially if you've lived through certain things. It's just like, I'm just dropping some wisdom. You could take it or leave it,
Yeah.
you're going to make the decision you're going to make, and I'll have to accept that. And you learn from your consequences, like learn from your mistakes too, so it's going to happen.
Do you two feel like you rebelled maybe against your parents later in life than your peers? Because I know for me, I feel like I rebelled against my parents later in my life. Like, I didn't really start saying no to things or changing the status quo until like my 20s, whereas my peers kind of, someone said this earlier, I think it was Dan, like, oh, you're 18, you still listen to your parents? Like, of course I was listening to my parents. You guys crazy? Like,
Yeah.
have you met them?
Yeah.
I'm listening.
The wrath? Do you understand?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was a late bloomer too.
Yeah.
Again, not until college is like when I started questioning things. And I mean, high school, sure, I pushed, but like I still was like obedient.
It depends what the subject was. Like in high school, I did rowing as my sport, and like my dad was like on my ass about it nonstop. And like him and I would fight a lot to the point like my siblings actually hated my sport because like it dominated the dinner table. And if me and my dad argued, we'd argue. We're both really similar. That like the longest I think I went without speaking to him was like a week and a half, 2 weeks. And my mom would be like, I just need you to go say sorry. Like, just go up to him and say, I'm not. She's like, I just need you to. And I was like, fine. And then you just walk up and say, I'm sorry. And that's it. And I was like, oh. So I'd only rebel in that sense, but like, I don't know. I feel like we butt heads a lot. So
Yeah. That's similar, but I feel like the fact that, and I can relate to what you're saying, like the fact that at the end you still caved and we're like, fine, sorry. And now maybe you're someone that's quick to say sorry. Maybe not, but I feel like it's like that training almost doesn't go away. It definitely was similar in my household with different things, but my mom would be like, just say sorry to your dad. So I'm like, okay, sorry. Or, you know what I mean? Like, I think getting apologies from my parents is like new. We just covered that. Yeah. Don't, and I
Wow.
wasn't holding my breath.
I don't even get that.
Yeah.
I don't even get that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's
to hear.
new. It's new and rare and not always applied in a way that makes full sense. Like they'll be like, oh, I'm sorry for this really specific thing that one time. It's like, that's not even what we're talking about. But
your parents said that to you?
yes, but it's usually, it's like funny because they'll apologize for something, but it'll be completely backwards. And I'm like, that's the apology you're choosing? Like,
oh, I feel you.
Dad's really strict. And one time recently I was talking to him and he was like, I'm sorry, like I should have been better. And I was like, okay, where are we going with this? And he was like, I should have been more cruel to you. And I wasn't, and I couldn't do it. And I couldn't treat you the way I need to treat you for you to have what you needed from me. And I was like, wait, so you wished you were more cruel? And he was like, yes, because, we had a moment where I was like, damn, what happened to you? Like, what did your parents, and he had good parents, but it's a different model of parenting, like kind of the opposite of gentle parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think he was kind of like, I didn't like to see you cry. Like, I didn't like to like upset you. It was really hard for me to discipline you, honestly. And like, yeah, I just feel like I should have been stronger for you. And to him, that's cruelty, right? But like, also full disclaimer, my dad wasn't like crazy or anything. But I think it's just to say that like, he wasn't necessarily living up to what he thought being a good parent was. Like, he was doing his best, but still there was that old school mindset of like, I need to, like my dad grew up getting belted. I was never belted. Like, there were certain things he just couldn't bring himself to do. And I feel like that's also
toughen you up a little bit or something.
Yeah, like my dad definitely wasn't like, like a modern day girl dad in the ways that, maybe like people are on Instagram or whatever. But my dad definitely was tough, but he also had a soft side. And I feel like he resented his own soft side and was like, oh, like I need to like be more strict or more firm or more. He chose the word cruel. I also love to say that maybe, English is not his first language. So maybe there's also a language gap.
I was gonna say, like, if I ever heard stories of your dad, I'm like, I know what he means, but it's just like that's
The
not.
harshest,
wrong wording.
it's the
The
harshest.
phrasing.
It's the hardest
Yeah.
way to say whatever he's choosing to say. So that's all to say that, like, yes, he's given me an apology, but it's like the weirdest, most backwards apology where I'm like,
That's-
I'll take it because this is progress, but
Yeah. That's still an apology.
but we doing it. We got the
Doing
apology.
it. Yeah, no, I don't hear that.
Yeah,
There's always
it's new.
it's her way or the highway.
Yes.
Mom's way or nothing. On my side.
Do you think that was like the same experience for her with her mother?
I'm sure. I've never actually asked her. That's something part of my healing I want to bring
Yeah.
up. But I'm sure. I know I never met my grandfather, but I know he was very tough on the girls of the family. And she came from like a big family of 13. So
Big.
and she was the youngest daughter.
Whoa.
So I think there was a lot of maybe pressure for the young one.
Yeah. I definitely think like I have a sister and a brother. It's one of those things where like, sometimes I'll hear like the way me and my brother grew up. I'm like, yeah, we grew up something similar. And then I hear the way my sister grew up. I'm like, huh, maybe it was different for you. You were the girl in the family.
Ladies sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Strict, I think. Yeah.
strict in like ways that now seem kind of archaic. I feel like being expected to learn how to like cook and clean and sew in really specific ways, at least in my household.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny because like in my household now, it's like my brother's a phenomenal chef. Like I love to bake. My sister's a great baker as well. But like growing up, like for the holidays, like my grandma, my aunt, my mom, like they'd all be the ones preparing the food, and they'd always say like to the boys, like, "Oh, like boys aren't in the kitchen, boys aren't in the kitchen, boys aren't in the kitchen." And now it's like my brother's honestly a chef. He like does drinks too, but like whatever he makes, I'm like, this is phenomenal. I love to like bake. I'll do like cinnamon rolls. And I'm just like, it's so funny how like, and now I'm curious, like, did I end up loving to cook because I was told for so long that boys don't belong in the kitchen, and it's like, these were women who were instilling that just over and over. And like, my grandma loved to cook and like, she'd have over like 14 grandkids every Tuesday for like 8 years. Every Tuesday, it was always, we're going to Mima's house for dinner. And I'm like, and then I think about it, I'm like, well, did she see it as like, well, this is like her role? Or was it also like she also loved to do it too? And it's like, where does it go? Versus I know some women who are like, oh, I have to cook. And it's like, they don't like, because like, well, I don't want to cook. I don't like to cook. Like, why doesn't the guy cook? And I'm like, that's also super fair. So it's like, sometimes when it's an older demographic, I'm like, was it just because you weren't really like exposed to that thought, or you were never like, you never questioned it?
Right. These gender roles that are just like passed down, like this is what's expected of you.
Yeah.
You know?
Your duty.
Yeah. And it's just like, that's the energy.
Like I only started cooking recently and enjoying it because I feel like I rebelled against it for so long. Like me and Dan used to live together.
Yeah.
And at one point Dan was like, do you even know how to cook? And I was like, valid question. I do actually know how to cook. And I'm actually a decent cook, but I think that I pushed away from it for so long because it was so expected of me. And I was like, nah, I'm not doing that just to spite you guys, you know.
The rebel.
Yeah.
Rebel inside.
Because I'm the youngest. I have an older sister, so she kind of took on a lot of the paving of the way. So I think that's because she cooks at all of the family gatherings and she like helps serve people and all that stuff. And I kind of go in and out of helping with like.
You need somebody to make sure like the cups of wine are filled, that the beers are flowing. Like, you know, if I'm like, it's like, if you're not cooking, I'm like, you know what? No one needs to cook, but like, let's pour the wine out, keep the vibes up.
Yeah.
Like, growing up-
charcuterie board.
I just
That's
remember
all.
being like jealous of the guys growing up because I felt like when I, would have family over and family friends, and I would see all the women working so hard and like not relaxing, and like I was like a kid, but I was expected to like do those things, and I saw the guys just like being served and like everything taken care of, and I was just like, I want to be with them. Like as a kid, you know what I mean? I was like, I want to chill too. I want to just hang out and have people like fill my plate for me and clean up all my stuff. Like,
I'd always feel so guilty on that, the cleaning up part. I was like, why are people sitting down? Like, well, some people are cleaning. I'm like,
gender roles.
yeah, it's
So I just remember like, and I do feel like I could have been more helpful as a kid to my mom and my
same.
sister. So like, love you guys, sorry. But I think I was just seeing it in real time of like, hey, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to go down this binary. Like, I don't like it. I want to be with them. They're chilling. And then, you get shown things as you get older about like guys do this. And, it's not like that anymore now, which is amazing. But like when I was growing up, it was very much like the boys play these sports and the girls do this and, whatever it is. And like, I remember being like, I don't know, this kind of sucks. Like, I'm getting the short end of the stick, I feel like. But sometimes it's...
all of them with like a glass of like whiskey or vodka on the sofa drinking, and she's like, I want to be there. I want to be sitting down drinking a glass.
Yeah. I don't have any brothers, so I kind of just took certain, I don't know, liberties maybe of being like, I'm just gonna take this role right now. I'm just gonna
claim this.
I'm gonna claim this.
I wanted to ask about how the past holidays. Did you spend it with your family? How's that dynamic going back? Is it expected to go back, with the tension between myself and my mom now? It's just like, it's feeling more of an obligation instead of a want, it's yeah. And with my dad passing as well, it's just like, it's an obligation because my mom's alone. Yeah. So I kind of have to be there for her despite my actual interest, because there really is no real connection. It's very sad, and that's one of the things I want to cultivate with my own kid, is the connection. There's not much we really talk about, and like, I don't think she knows much about me. I don't know much about her, really, other than I know her personality. But yeah, for the holidays, like, is it a joyous occasion going back, or is there, it's like those ill feelings coming back in you for being surrounded by them for X amount of days, or is it like, how were the holidays?
Daniel?
No, so I think it depends, because like, I actually didn't know you weren't close to your mom. I thought you were really close to I knew you were close to your dad, but I also thought you were close to your mom as well. So just learned something a bit more. I think it kind of depends on the relationship you have. So like, I'm close to both my parents, but I'm not close to them for everything in my life. And that's something that's hard for me to like accept. That's been like the source of like, some of like, I had one of the biggest fights with my mom on the 20th or the 18th, whatever it was. And I was like, wow, I was not expecting to have this conversation with my mom. And I remember I texted my brother, I'm like, I need to talk to you about something before I talk about it with mom and dad, but I need to brainstorm this first. Cause my brother was like my biggest like advisor. I'm like, let's trust this one here. But I think it depends. Like, my sister maybe resonate a lot more with you on that, versus me. Luckily I'm able to I did a road trip with my mom from New York to Miami where the course of 3 days, and we had one blow up fight, and that was it. And then we got over it. We chatted about it. We're just still driving. I think it depends where I'm at mentally, honestly. If I'm really strong, we're not in a mood, or it goes well. This past one specifically was kind of funky. Our dog had passed away on the 23rd, so everybody was in a funk. And then on the 24th, no, yeah, so it was a little weird, but for the most part, I have a good time with them, but I have a limit. And my mom sees it right now I'm doing the nomad thing, and at one point I was going to be home from Thanksgiving through now, And my mom was like, I don't want you here from Thanksgiving to Christmas. Like, you have to leave and then you can come back. But she's like, I don't want you in Miami. She's like, you don't do well here. I acknowledge it. She's like, it's not that I don't love you. It's that I just know you don't do well here. So my mom's like changed a lot with her understanding. I appreciate it. It's more so sometimes with my dad where it's like the way that his love language isn't necessarily my love language. So sometimes that's where we hit some friction. But it's all about like I have a cap, before I'm like, I think I need to go elsewhere because it kind of just throws me in my funk, or I feel like I repress a part of myself for too long, and that's where I'm like, I can't do it anymore. All of a sudden, like I walk into a room and like I bring my own darkness, and that's when I know it's time to have like distance and separation. And I would say like, I don't know, it just comes from the whole thing of like what's taboo to speak of, and like at what point, like, do you protect your own mental health, or is it like you sacrifice your mental health in order to like shock them? I don't like the word shock, but like discuss something that they're uncomfortable about. And that's sometimes where it's like, I struggle with my sister, like it'd be like my brother here, my sister here. I'm in the middle where it's like my brother gets along no problem. My sister is the one that definitely has the most friction, and depending on the topic, I'll have friction, and I need to like navigate it in a way where I'm like, okay, you can maintain this and not go too stir crazy.
I feel like that's a lot of growth on you and your mom's part. That like,
Yeah, that's
you're more
boundary
authentic,
setting
because
right
you're more
there.
authentic with her, and then she can pick up on that and be like, hey, like I love you, but this isn't good for you,
Right.
instead of like, oh, these are maybe like my desires that I'm going to impose on you, of like you being close by all the time.
Yeah. I mean, how did you take that? Did you feel a certain way when you heard that? Were you surprised? Were you?
No, I was generally like, you know what? I think that's so right, because like when I left to Colorado over COVID, it's because I was here for like a year and a half, and like I felt myself like going back into the closet, and I was like, I gotta get out. I was like, took so long to get out of this closet, like the clothes was, I'm like, get me out of here, please. And like I just told my mom some stuff. I was like, Mom, I gotta go for X, Y, and Z reasons. Like that's just the way it is. And sometimes I feel a little bit that here, where it's like when I'm here for too long, like if I date, I'll be out in public, but I'm like looking over my shoulder a little bit more, just because like my family wise, they're not like I'm accepted, but it's not like talked about,
Yeah.
Like, well, how long does being accepted feel okay versus like, well, this is still part of my life. And that's where I will struggle at moments, be like, I need to, if I'm not like standing up for myself here or like feeling authentic, that's when I'm like, I think I need to start to leave a little bit sooner.
Self-awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Authentic self.
Seriously.
You don't want to keep hiding, right? That eats up mentally, emotionally, and your body. That's not healthy. Yeah. So
Chronic health issues are a result of hiding your authentic self,
yeah.
says Nancy.
Says Nancy in my doctor's bill.
And my doctor bills.
But Hanny also went home for the holidays.
Yeah, I went home too. And it was actually super interesting because me and my family had been kind of on the outs for like the past 5 years. But this was the first time I went home, and it was like I felt genuinely seen and like supported by them, and it had not always felt that way. And it took like so many, arguments, years of therapy, sometimes not even speaking to each other for periods of time, for everyone to kind of let the dust settle and sort of like come back together. And it was really interesting being on the other side of that, because I was like, wow, we all have done so much work just to get here. And I think that like when you and your family system do some work, like you change yourself, as a result, you're changing everybody else around you. So it's not even that like everybody, has to like go on this path or like go to therapy or whatever it is. It's like by you embracing your authentic self and you doing like what you need to do and setting those boundaries, it really does have a domino effect. And I saw that firsthand, and it was wild. So
That's amazing.
and I honestly, like, I feel like I would talk to you about it, Dan, sometimes about, just issues I'm having with my family or things we're not seeing eye to eye on. And it was a pleasant surprise. I know for you too, you were like, really? Like, wow, you know. But it was a smooth visit, and I feel like we knew where everything was at. And I also really needed them. Like, I'm going through like kind of like some times of change on my own. So it felt really good to be able to have that support, because it didn't really feel that way for a long time. So this visit was one for the books, oddly enough. So I feel grateful for that. And I also felt like I was standing on like a mountain's worth of like work that we all did.
I was gonna say, 'cause I feel like that came from you for a long time already, knowing when to stop oversharing, knowing what you like want to tell your parents, what parts of yourself they want to know, but also like if there was something, like those are those things where it's like you would tell your parents kind of the end product, not the 10 steps to get there, because like the 10 steps are gonna be a battle. You'll tell them like the end of it, like then that's like you putting the boundaries, and like that was the growth that I feel like you had developed for a long time.
Well, it reminds me of what you were saying, T, about like you being like, I already signed the lease. This is what's happening. That's what it is. I feel like that's what I've been doing the past, few years of my life, of just being like, this is what I'm doing. I'm keeping you informed in my life. Yeah. But I'm not asking for permission, and I'm not asking for approval. And I'd love to have your blessing. But if I can't have that, then that's fine too. And I think at first that was so hard, especially for my mom, because we were really close. And it was really hard for her to kind of like take that step back and not be the person sort of like, for lack of a better term, like puppeteering my life or helping me steer the ship, and me being like, hey, this is what I'm doing, and that's just what it is. I think now they'll even say things. They're like, well, you don't need our permission. Or like, they'll just like put it in there. Like they'll pepper it in at the end of a conversation where it's like, hey, maybe it wasn't necessarily like that before. So I think that going home for the holidays, I was nervous about it. And my parents were nervous about it. My sister and her husband, like they all were like, we were nervous having you back because we didn't know how it was going to be, But it ended up being a really good trip for all of us. And I think that we're all super happy, and like I feel like I also knew when to like take a step back, or also be like, hey, I'm not involving myself in this conversation, or I'm not triangulating myself between, this person's argument. Like I think that as the youngest, I've taken on a role as like mediator and like peacekeeper, and sort of just like making jokes, keeping everyone light, and like people can't be mad if they're laughing, So I think that I would take on that role a lot, to the point where it was detrimental, and people couldn't really even see me necessarily being like serious or like whatever it was. So knowing when to have that boundary of like, if the conversation's going to be XYZ, then I don't need to be part of it. And I'm not controlling someone else. I'm controlling only myself.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, ding, ding.
No, that's so beautiful.
So I walked away from a lot of conversations.
Good.
While I was home, but as a result, we all had a better time.
Yeah.
But it's necessary. Like when you get triangulated in a conversation, and then like you hear one side of the conversation, and the other person tells you their side of the conversation, I'm just like, and what do you want me to do in this? Like,
yeah,
right. What do I do with this information? This is like, ooh, yeah. No, step away. Be the Homer Simpson into the bushes.
Into the bushes.
Just like, hey, I'm out of here.
Love you guys.
Yeah,
but I'm
not
part of this.
Well, that's amazing. That's amazing to hear.
Yeah,
that's so great.
Possible.
The growth mindset, and that the whole family is open and progressing and changing. In a positive light.
The beginning was not like that. Just really want to put it out there, maybe for people who are hearing this and being like, oh, like whatever, that's unrelatable. It's just like in the beginning it was a huge struggle, but to Dan's point earlier, like each time the bomb detonated, the rubble was less and less. Like there was, less of a harsh impact.
Yeah I hear you.
Like some white kids I know just like have this sense of being so polite. Like I never grew up calling my friends' parents like Mrs. Ramos. It was always like, hey Daisy, what's up? But I know some people to this day, they're like, and Mrs. Peterson. And I'm like, Jim's mom, like, what are you talking about? You should get the fuck out of here. Like, you're an adult, she's an adult. Call. Like, I think you could say like, yo, Jill, what's up? Like, I don't know. I feel like that's something that sometimes culturally is really different when I would talk to like some, or maybe it's just like Miami's this interesting sphere where it's like, I remember my high school did a poll, and I went to a public school of like, what's the demographic of the school? The school was like 50% Hispanic. It was like 40% Black. It was like 9% white. And then it was like 1% remainder of everything. And it was like, that included like Asian, and that included like, honestly, everything of it. It was like Southeast Asian, Pacific. It was all of that was just 1%. And I was like, wow, Miami's just so different that like, growing up here was never the feeling of like minority, but always like a majority because everyone was like Latin around me. And my whole group of friends was like all of these different like Peruvian, Bolivian, Colombian, Cuban, Puerto Rican, etc. That like then going to school in Boston, I was like, oh, this is white culture. Like that's so interesting.
Shocking. It's eye-opening, right?
You don't hug and kiss when you say like see a friend. Like that's different.
No, you don't.
Well, not.
It's very like prissy. I was gonna say prim and proper, but it's kind of like there. You still have those like puritanical roots from when the Pilgrims came. Like you can feel it, I think. But I think also like growing up, if I was gonna call someone something, it wouldn't necessarily be, Mrs. Peterson or whatever. It would be like auntie, like tiocho, or like jiajo, like uncle or auntie. So it was always interesting going from like my parents' world and my family friends and my family to like, my like school world or, with my friends that weren't.
You also did Russian math camp, and I feel like Russian math camp is like formative too for you.
I did. I went to the Russian School of Mathematics, and I went to Russian math camp also, because there were things in the community I grew up in that like everybody did, and that and like ballroom dancing was a big one, but I didn't ballroom dance because that was my rebellion.
Yeah.
Like I'm not
Doing
doing
it. Did your sister do it?
No, but I kind of wish. Oh, I did rhythmic gymnastics instead. But I wish that I did ballroom dancing in hindsight. Like not because of the social pressure. I still am like that was cool that I said no to that. But I wish that I had rhythm, and I wish I knew how to like cha-cha or something.
Or to like.
But I know I'm really good with fractions. So what's up? Really good with equations. So there's that. But yeah, Russian math camp was super formative. I was the president, which is hilarious.
Hannah for Prez.
That was what they said.
At the campaign.
My platform was plunging toilets and supplying toilet paper to all the toilets on campus.
Stop.
Yeah, there was this guy who was like the maintenance man. His name was Mehman, and he like would just always be like asleep or like not unclogging the toilets at all. And girls camp and guys camp were like separated. And I remember we just had so many problems with the girls' toilets. And my dad, remember earlier I said that I didn't have a brother, so I kind of like took on random roles, like those things. So when I was little and my dad needed help like at our house plunging the toilets, he taught me how to do it. So I was like, I'm an expert plunger.
I heard Hannah say this multiple times. Like, I've never heard the backstory, but Hannah's fun fact, one of them could literally be, I can plunge any toilet you got.
Any toilet. So it was almost like a party trick. But then when I got to camp, I was like, this is ridiculous. I don't need Mehman to plunge my toilet. I can plunge my toilet. So I just went around freeing all the girls' toilets. And then I was like, fuck it. I can bring it to the boys' side of camp too. And then I did that. And then politics, baby.
There it is.
Became the president.
You paved the way for cleaner toilets.
Well, people were like, what have you done for us lately? And I was like, that toilet.
Yeah.
Actually, I cleaned that for you.
Can you flush your toilet?
Yeah, you're welcome. Did you have something to wipe your ass with? Yeah, you did.
Right.
You're welcome.
You saved your ass. Really. There you go. Well, I wanted to kind of close off with something fun with the new year and all. I know there's also these cultural superstitions that come into the new year and like how to celebrate it. I know for like the Filipino culture. As a Filipino American, like my mom would tell us, or my parents would tell us this growing up, is like you have to have like coins in on your person for prosperity for the new year, and you have to jump really high so you could grow tall. And I'm like, I'm not that tall, and I jumped. I can't.
I jumped so high. What happened?
So high as a kid, and here I am at 5'2". Didn't work. Again, I'm just curious to know from like your cultures and your backgrounds, like if there was anything for New Year's, any superstitions.
I want to hear Hannah's, because one of my favorite superstitions about Hannah is whenever you sneeze at the appropriate time, she goes, for the truth. Like, blessing for the truth. And
Yeah, so, it's funny that you say that, because I feel like a bad member of my family, because I'm like, damn, like we definitely have superstitions and traditions, but I clearly was not paying attention. My family's very superstitious in general, so there's a lot of general superstitions that I could share. But for, New Year's, the only thing I can think of that my family has been pretty, consistent about was wearing something new for the new year, to go into the new year with like a clean slate, whether it's like even socks or a haircut or whatever.
Oh, you're both right.
But yeah,
This
they're
year?
super superstitious in general. So I'll just share like a few. One of them is when you're telling a story and it sounds really out there, but it actually happened, and you sneeze during the story, somebody else will say, for the truth. Like, and it's funny because it's not just like an Eastern European thing. It's also referenced in Homer's The Odyssey. Like, Odysseus comes back from his travels and he is telling a crazy story, and he sneezes while telling it. And I think it was like a monk is like, he's sneezing a blessing on his story, so it means it's the truth. Stephen Colbert actually has a really funny rendition, little monologue explaining that much better than I could. But another one would be like, if you bump heads with each other, like physically, like knock heads, you have to like bump heads again, so you're not arguing in real life.
I'll take it back.
Or if somebody steps on your foot, you have to step on their foot, but not hard. Yeah. Some people go way too hard, and they're like, God, and you're like, whoa, I didn't say abuse me. I said, like, just step on my foot, because you don't want to offset the balance. You don't want to step on each other's toes. So a bunch of little things like that. But then there were some that I had to completely nix because they were so just taking up too much of my life. Like, one of them was, don't let someone cross over you. Like, if you're like laying down and someone steps over your legs or something. And you know what? I had to let that go at a young age. I was like, fine, I'll be short, or whatever the consequences are, because it just became insane, like chasing people around if they crossed over me, to like cross over them, or be like, no, you can't cross over me at the movie theater, or like whatever it was. So yeah, there were some I just had to say goodbye to and be like, I'm a bad person, I guess, in this regard, but sayonara.
Not at all.
What about you, Daniel?
There are honestly a handful in the like Latino culture, especially for the new year. I feel like the most popular one is you have to eat 12 grapes. And you do grapes too, T?
We do fruit. We have to have like 12 or as many fruit. My mom like puts the whole entire table is full of round fruit, oranges, apples, all the things. Like, just lay it out. But I think it's very similar. Yes.
Yeah, it's like I don't know why grapes. Honestly, I just thought about it now when you're talking about. Hannah's much more eloquent than I am and asks questions to understand the reason behind everything. I'm just like, oh, I gotta eat grapes because 12 grapes, 12 months of the year, one grape, good luck for each month. You wish. You say like a wish for each one, like intention of it. But I don't know why it's grapes. But I mean, like, I don't know, T, if you guys do fruit as well, comes from the Spaniards, I guess. Like,
probably is the Spaniards, but I think it's the circles, because like prosperity, and it's just more luck.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I don't know. I don't know the full either. I'm just like, okay, I have fruits out. I did actually have grapes out. I was just like, okay, I'll pop some grapes.
What color grapes?
See what kind. We had red and green.
I like green, but it's a preference thing. But supposedly green is the one that's better. I think goes towards wealth and health, and it's a lot.
There's a lot of superstition leaning towards money.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, there's that one. Another one is, I don't know if this is just Cuban, but you get your luggage and you go around the house, you go around the block, and it's supposed to be to bring travel for the year. So
Oh.
like, in certain neighborhoods, you would just see like a bunch of Cubans walking around with their luggages.
Did you have all of your luggage? Because you're nomadic. Were you just like 5 carry?
No, honestly, I've never done that one. But this year, I was with a bunch of friends, like in the Keys, and we like got our luggage for a hot sec, and we're like, we're traveling right now. Woo. That's really popular one. The one that we do every year also is you get a bucket of water, and then you open the front door and you throw the bucket of water out, and it's supposed to be like to release all the bad omens of the year and to like welcome in the new spirits. And then the one that I actually do, and this one I'm like very like attentive to, is the first rain of the year, to make sure you get wet by the first rain. So whenever, yeah, I like the first rain one's my favorite, and that was one that's like whenever it would happen. I remember my mom, she'd like, "It's raining, you gotta go outside, like get up, go, 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 go," and I was like, okay. But now I like do the first rain as well.
I love the picking and choosing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
you're
have
like,
to.
oh, I like this one. I'm gonna do this one, and this one, it's like,
Right.
I don't know.
Which the
I mean, someone says knock on wood. I'm like, find the wood right now. I need a knock. Oh, my OCD is going off.
God, knocking on the
Knock.
head too. Do you guys have that? Where it's like if someone, says something like, oh, like, I hope your flight goes safely or whatever, and then you're like, oh, knock on wood, and then if you don't have wood, you knock on your head 3 times. Does anyone else?
have
Yeah.
Yeah. You have or have not?
have not.
Okay, I have. I feel like you have.
Yeah, 100%. If you can't find wood, you'll knock on your head.
And then it's like funny because it's like so much of that, to your point, like overlaps with OCD of just like irrational thoughts and then like ritualistic compulsions. So, just bring that up there.
Right?
Yeah, you're like, knock on wood. You're like knocking your head 3 times. And everyone's like, you good? And you're like, I don't even know anymore.
Reactive now. It's a reflex. It's a reflex. Well, I just want to thank you both for hopping on. This is technically the first episode of
Woo!
the First Generation podcast
Woo!
with my
That's
lovely
team.
guests, Dan and Hannah. Again, thank you both for coming on. I had to have you both as the first guest because, again, we had this conversation more than 4 years ago, and I was like, I just had to bring it back up. So I appreciate, again, your time and energy and just opening up your hearts to all this. This has been a passion and a work in progress and journey for me, and I'm hoping it's opening up for others as well that are first generation or experience first generation feelings as well. So thank you both for taking the time.
Thank you so much. This has been so
Yeah.
cool.
Love
It's
you.
important.
Love you guys.
Love you.
Also, there's no one else I would go on the mic for. I know maybe Dan, you feel similarly that we were like not. I don't know. Talking about your family, especially as a first generation person, is really personal and vulnerable, and you don't know how it's gonna go. So thank you for creating the safe space to like talk about these things and talk about them in an authentic way.
Yeah.
So thank you.
No, and thank you both. Like, honestly, even earlier on, how easy it is just to talk to you both. It means a lot to me, especially, again, expressing and just bottling up something for so long it just eats away. And I'm glad that we were able to talk about it then and talk about it now, that there's others out there that do go through this, and it's detrimental to health. So
Isn't it so funny how there's so many similarities just like across cultures where
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know, at face value, it's like, what does Cuban, Ukrainian, Russian, and Filipino culture have in common? Turns out a lot.
yeah,
What?
So
So
that's really
much.
cool too.
Well, thank you so much. I wish I was in the room with you guys now in LA.
Ugh.
thank you guys.